Someone you know is going to die. You already know that. What you probably do not know is what you will feel compelled to do next. Not what grief counselors recommend, not what your culture tells you. Something older. Something that was already happening long before language existed to explain it. Death has always been a problem for the living, not just emotionally, practically, biologically. Your ancestors had to figure out what to do with the body before modern funerals, before religion as we know it, before any institution existed to handle the weight of loss. What they did next changed everything about how humans think, build societies, and understand time itself. The oldest confirmed burial on record is roughly 300,000 years old. Researchers discovered it in a South African cave system called Rising Star. The fossils belonged to Homo naledi, a small-brained relative of modern humans. And yet, according to paleoanthropologist Lee Berger and his team, these creatures deliberately carried their dead deep into the cave, far from where they lived or ate. There was no accident here. This was intentional. This was ritual. That discovery shattered a core assumption. Scientists had long believed that symbolic behavior, the kind that assigns meaning to death rather than just disposing of it, required a large brain. Homo naledi had a brain roughly the size of an orange. It turns out the impulse to mark death as meaningful is far more ancient and far more instinctive than anyone suspected. So, what else were your ancestors doing? The evidence is unsettling in the best possible way. At Shanidar Cave in northern Iraq, Neanderthal remains dating back 60,000 years were found surrounded by clusters of pollen. Archaeologist Ralph Selecki interpreted this as flower burial, suggesting Neanderthals placed blooms on the bodies of their dead. Later researchers questioned whether the pollen arrived naturally, but even the debate itself tells you something. These bones raise the question because the context was unusual enough to demand explanation. And then there are the ochre-stained bodies. Across sites in Africa, Europe, and Australia, ancient humans were coating corpses with red ochre before burial. The color red across nearly every human culture on Earth carries symbolic weight. It signals life, blood, power. Researchers like Francesco D'Errico argue that ochre staining the dead was a form of preservation symbolism, a way of visually restoring life force to a body that had lost it. Your ancestors were trying to undo death, at least aesthetically, at least long enough to say goodbye properly. But not every early human chose burial. Some cultures practiced sky burial, placing bodies on elevated platforms for birds and weather to reclaim. Others practiced defleshing, the deliberate removal of flesh from bone by surviving members of the group. At a site in England called Gough's Cave, dating back 14,700 years, human bones show clear cut marks and deliberate bone breakage, consistent with both cannibalism and the creation of skull cups. Researchers at the Natural History Museum in London, including Sylvia Bello, documented this in extraordinary detail. This was not desperation. This appears to have been ceremony. The bones were processed with care and precision. Skulls were shaped into vessels, possibly used in ritual. What does your brain do with that information? Probably recoil. But your recoil is cultural, not biological. The line between honoring the dead and consuming them was not always a line at all. For some groups, eating the dead was the highest form of incorporation, a way of carrying someone forward, literally, inside the body of the living. The dead did not disappear. They continued. What is striking across all of these practices, across burial and ochre and ceremony and skull cups, is not the diversity. It is the consistency of the underlying impulse. Every single known human group throughout all of recorded and archaeological history has treated the dead as something more than biological matter to be discarded. The anthropologist Ernest Becker argued in his landmark work, The Denial of Death, that human civilization itself, all of it, the art and religion and architecture and ambition, is essentially an elaborate response to the awareness of mortality. We build because we know we will die. We create legacies because the alternative is unbearable. And here is the mirror. The next time you feel the urge to keep a photograph of someone who has passed, or say their name out loud in a room where they are no longer present, or visit a grave, or hold a funeral, you are not performing a modern custom. You are continuing something that began before your species technically existed in its current form. The impulse is 300,000 years old at minimum, possibly older. You are doing exactly what Homo naledi did in the dark of a South African cave, carrying something precious into a place it did not need to go, not for the dead, but because something in you cannot accept that they are simply gone. The problem of what to do when someone dies has never really been solved. It has only been inherited.